Okay, everybody, so we're going to move on to finding the area of a triangle, but I wanted to recap first how to multiply fractions because it'll lead us later into talking about the formula for area of a triangle. So again, remember when we're multiplying fractions, this is a whole number times a fraction, and again, we just multiply straight across. But before we can multiply straight across, we have to make this whole number a fraction. So again, remember, by putting it over 1, we can just make that a fraction without changing the number. And now we can just multiply straight across. So then we get 8 times 1 is 8, and 1 times 2 is 2. And remember, fractions are division in disguise. So this really means 8 divided by 2, which we know to be 4. Okay, example number 2. Here the fraction is first and the whole number is second. It doesn't matter. We still do the same process. We need to make this 9 a whole number, a fraction. So we're just going to go ahead and put it over 1, so that way we can multiply straight across. So 1 times 9 is 9, and 3 times 1 is 3. But then again, 9 divided by 3, we know to be just 3. Right? And the last one, 12 times 1/4. Again, when there's no operation symbol and they're side by side like this or in parentheses, again, that means multiplication. So 12 times 1/4, you can even rewrite this 12 over 1 times 1 over 4 if that helps you. And then we can just multiply straight across. So 12 times 1 is 12, and 1 times 4 is 4. And this reads 12 divided by 4, which we know to also be 3. All right, so let's go back and look at example 1. 8 times 1/2 ended up being 8 divided by 2. Why do we think that? Same thing, okay? Why do we think that when we multiplied 8 times 1/2, we ended up getting 8 divided by 2? Well, if you remember, and I'll give you a new example, let's say we took 12 times 1/2, okay? We're going to make this a fraction, so we multiply straight across. 12 times 1 is 12, and 1 times 2 is 2. Again, we end up getting the same thing, right? 12 divided by 2, and we get 6. Or we could have just said 12 divided by 2, and we get the same thing. We also get 6. Why do you think that is? Can you remember why 1/2? Multiplying by 1/2 and dividing by 2 are the same thing. So again, these processes are the same because of one word. And that is, if you remember, it is called the reciprocal. Okay, so 1/2 and 2 are reciprocals of one another. So multiplying by 1/2 and dividing by 2 actually end up being the same thing. And we're going to carry this over to when we apply it to the area of a triangle, which we're going to do next. All right, so moving on to find the area of a triangle. So the formula that it gives us on the star chart is the area equals 1/2 base times height. So again, the little b stands for base, and the h stands for height. Now, triangles can be tricky when finding the height. So I drew a couple of examples of triangles here, and I want to just go through and label the parts so that way you know how to find the base and how to find the height. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to label base and height for each one. So this first one right here, this is a right triangle. Okay, so here we have the base. Okay. And the height line in a triangle has to be perpendicular, or it has to make a right angle with the base. So therefore, it can't be this one. It has to be this one, this vertical one, this perpendicular one. That makes that 90-degree angle. Okay, for this one here, if you notice, the base is easy to identify. It's this here. Okay, so here's the base. But the height, if you notice, is this straight line coming down from the middle to the base to make that perpendicular 90-degree angle. So here is our height line. Okay, this right here, the one that's slanted, Let me get another marker. Okay, so this one right here is called the slant height. Okay, and we don't ever want to use this to as our height to find the area, okay, because this is not making that perpendicular line with the base, okay? So this is called the slant height, and this is the regular height, okay? The last example here, the base again is easy to identify. The base is here. But now if you notice, this triangle goes this way with this slant height and this slant height. Neither one of these makes that perpendicular 90-degree angle from the top of the triangle to the base. So here we're going to have to look outside here where they draw this dotted line and it makes that 90-degree angle. So this is our height line. Okay, so many triangles can have the height, the height line to be a little bit different. All right, so what I want to focus on is this formula here. And our multiplying by a half is the same thing as dividing by 2. So if we follow that, we can also rewrite our formula to be the area equals the base times the height, all divided by 2. And this formula is a little easier because sometimes students get mixed up when we're multiplying by this 1/2. But again, we know that multiplying by 1/2 and dividing by 2 are the same thing because they are reciprocals of one another. So we're going to move on to a couple of examples, and we're going to use both formulas and see if we get the same answer, which we will. But again, I just want you to choose the formula that you like or that works for you best. Okay, so here we have example number 1. We have a triangle. It tells me that the base, okay, right here is 6 centimeters. And the height, again, make sure it's making that perpendicular line, is 4 centimeters. So all we're going to do is we're going to take that information, we're going to put it into the formula, and we're going to solve. Okay, so I'm going to use this formula first. The traditional formula, area equals 1/2 base times height. And so I'm just going to take my information and I'm going to plug it into the formula. A equals, and everything else stays the same. I'm just going to use the information that I know. The base is 6, so times 6, and then the height is 4, so times 4. Okay, so then here, I'm going to multiply this out. But again, these are whole numbers, so in order to multiply, I have to make them into fractions. So 1/2 times 6 over 1 times 4 over 1. And now I can multiply straight across. So 1 times 6 is 6, and 6 times 4 is 24. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 1 is still 2. So I end up getting 24 over 2. Again, but 24 divided by 2 equals 12. So our area equals 12, and our units, please don't forget your units, centimeters and squared. Okay, all right. Now, would I get the same answer if I just said the area, if I use the other formula, area equals base times height divided by 2? Okay, so we're going to see if that works out. So I'm going to just do it in this area here. All right, so I should get 12 centimeters squared. So the, let me see if I can. Area equals base times height divided by 2. Okay, I'm going to plug in the information. I know the base is 6 times the height is 4. And I'm going to put all of that over 2. So 6 times 4 is 24. So the area equals 24 over 2. Everything else stays the same. And then the area equals 24 divided by 2, which is 12 centimeters squared. So we do end up getting the same thing, okay, because 1/2 and 2 are reciprocals of one another. So multiplying by a half and dividing by 2 are the same thing. So whichever formula you feel comfortable with, I suggest you use that one. Most people feel comfortable with this formula here, where it's just a simple dividing by 2 and then others feel okay with just multiplying by this 1/2. So I'm going to use both for the examples, and you just determine which one you feel more comfortable with. All right, so moving on to number 2. So first things we need to identify is the base and the height. Here, the base right here is 4 feet, and the height right here, this is a right triangle, so the height line is actually part of the triangle, which is 3. So we got our base and we have our height. So again, I'm just going to plug it into the formula. Area equals 1/2 base times height. Okay, area equals 1/2, and then I just plug in all the information that I know. I know the base is 4. I know the height is 6. I'm sorry, the height is 3. Okay, and once I have everything plugged in, I'm just going to go ahead and solve, and this is just a simple, I'm going to rewrite these as fractions. 1/2 times 4/1 times 3/1, and now I can multiply straight across. 1 times 4 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 1 is still 2. So 12 divided by 2, I end up getting 6. So our area is 6, and then we need to look at our units, feet. Okay, and we put that squared there because we're multiplying feet times feet. Okay, all right, moving on to example number 3. And again, if I'm moving too quickly, that's fine. You can just pause through the video to if you need to slow down. All right, example number 3. Again, we need to identify the base and the height. Again, we have another right triangle, which makes it pretty simple. The base is 6 and the height is 5. So then we're just going to use our formula. I'm going to use area equals base times height divided by 2 this time. Okay, so I'm just going to plug in the information I know. The base is 6. The height is 5. And I'm going to take all of that and divide it by 2. So then I just have to do the math. 6 times 5 is 30 and divided by 2. So 30 divided by 2 is 15. Our units are meters and squared. All right. Last example, example number 4. So again, I'm going to identify the base and the height. Here, the height is, the base is 6 millimeters. Okay. The height is, now inside the triangle, because we want that perpendicular, makes that right angle. So I know this dotted line is the height, which is 3 millimeters. Okay. So we're just going to take one of the formulas, whichever one you choose. I'm going to do the 1/2 base times height. So area equals 1/2, and then I'm just going to plug in the information. The base is 6, the height is 3, and I simply just need to solve. Okay, so 1/2 times 6/1 times 3/1, multiply straight across. I get 1 times 6 is 6, 6 times 3 is 18, 2 times 1 is 2, times 1 is 2. So I end up getting 18/2, or 18 divided by 2, which again, the area is 9. My units are millimeters squared. Okay, so hopefully this video cleared up any questions that you might have had, and I'm going to put a practice problems in Schoology so that way you can do more practice, and if you have any questions, go ahead and just send them to me. All right, have a good day.